One requested change to the agenda. It's to move item 11 up to the beginning so we can get rid of Mike. So, does anybody have any other changes to the agenda? No. Okay, then I make a motion the agenda be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Kevin had to attend a meeting, I think it was in Athens or somewhere this morning, so we won't be getting a parks update from him. So we'll go straight to the update from White Path Golf Course tonight.
Good morning. January was pretty much a washout. Cold, rainy, snowy. It wasn't terrible, but could have been much better. As far as the pro shop and stuff, I'm trying to just get stuff organized, get it ordered where I can. Last year was good for us to try to get stuff. This year seems like it's going to be better. Talked to many reps and their inventory's up. So it seems like it's going to be easier to get stuff. I hope they're not like it. So, but as far as the course, it's wet, very playable. Got a drainage issue on 9 I'm doing right now. Should be done with it Tuesday. Get this rain off, see any rain coming, so we should make it like that.
Good. Thank you. Okay, update from Public Works. Jim?
I hope you all have got a lot of time.
Jim, we always allocate a lot of time for you.
Well, I'll skip over the road paving. What I have done is I've given you a copy of the road paving list and stuff that we'll talk about when that agenda comes up. First of all, Charlie, I have nothing to report on the status of the Roller Cage Bridge. I don't know if you have anything.
No, it's just going to be whenever.
So far as I know, it is still in engineering. The project has not been let yet, so and the same is true for Vanilla Lane.
Well, they had originally told us the project would be let in August of 22. So they still have time to stick to that, but then this whole thing of 25 started creeping into it, so I don't know where they are with it.
Yeah, and I've got to call in to the district GDOT office to try to get a status report. The 21 contractor road paving, Town Road, Round Top Road, Holden Road, and Mount Pisgah is, for all practical purposes, finished. I hope you all have had a chance to look at the work. And,
Are they all striped now?
they are all striped. We've still got a couple of issues with the striping that Coates, the contractor, is dealing with their subcontractor on.
Okay.
But that project went very well, and I think the quality of it shows. And I would hope that the county would continue when it comes to asphalt paving, is that we contract it out. We don't try to do it in-house.
Well, we're going to have to because we don't have the equipment or the expertise to
We
do
don't have
asphalt
the
paving.
equipment that we would need, milling machine and paving machine that is working.
That works.
Yeah, it works. The other thing that I want to report to you in the road department is, and I have provided pictures there that if you would pass around and take a look at it. We have a road slide that developed last Thursday, I guess, with the 5 inches of rain. This is the 3rd time in my 20 years with the county that this has occurred. The last time, for the benefit of Hubert and Karleen, Charlie was chairman at that time, and we actually closed Kells Ridge, the middle part of Kells Ridge, because it didn't serve anyone, and dealt with the road slide at that time the best we could. This time, what you will see from the photos is that the road slide originated on top at the Flat Branch entrance to Kells Ridge and slid through private property and all the way down and emptied into Kells Creek. Kells Creek is the stream that crosses Boardtown Road, where the culverts, the new culverts were installed, and the old bridge, the old abandoned bridge is still there. The unique thing about this is that, and if you look at the last page, you will see where the road slide originated on that property, and it's all private property, even Kells Ridge. But we had code enforcement, I don't know if Art's here. We had code enforcement up there to look at it yesterday, and his opinion is that we have the right to go in there and clean that stream out. We have a bridge that is silted up that we've also got to deal with. But it is going to be a major task to get the trees, telephone poles, rocks, silt, and everything out of there. So I wanted to make you aware of that because that will be a special project that we'll be dealing with for some time. As far as the repair of the slide through the private property, it is solid rock, and we have no plans to do any repair there. We'll repair the stream and repair the road the best we can on the upper side. But where that slide goes, you know, it's private property. As I said, this is the 3rd time in 20 years for this slide to happen. And the first time it happened, it literally destroyed a house that's on the bottom end. Charlie, I'll be happy to take you up there.
Yeah, we're right up there.
But it is going to be a major.
Jim, I'd like to see it myself also, so I
I'm
would
sorry?
like to see it myself also.
Okay. Well, you all have the right to go out and check roads, so why don't we just arrange a time for all 3 of you to take a look at it? However you want to do it.
Did that slide happen, is that an empty lot? There was no house on the private lot that?
No, Karleen, And
I'm very familiar with that road, so.
There's no way to build a house on that road.
So it's the one, well, I'll see it.
It's a subdivision. The best I can determine, the Kell family owned that property in there. There's an old mill down on the creek, and it was subdivided years ago. And the lower part, you've got people there trying to defy the laws of gravity, building summer homes, cabins, some live full-time. And then the upper part, you've got full-time people that live up there, the Flat Branch end of Kell. So, yeah. But, anyway, just another day in the neighborhood. The other thing that I wanted to report to you as far as roads are concerned, we have finished, in 2021 element, we have finished setting the base for Pleasant Valley Road, and we are currently working on setting base on Pisgah. And we are waiting for the chip spread. The report is that we should have that new chip spreader sometime in February, not March. But we haven't got that confirmed. So, but we will have those two roads ready to start paving, you know, as soon as weather permits. Right now we couldn't. But that's what we're concentrating on right now. Any questions as far as roads are concerned? Solid waste, let me first apologize that I do not have the monthly report for January. As you are aware, we have a new vendor for our solid waste collection, Waste Pro USA of Georgia, and let me say to you, they are a breath of fresh air. They started on the 3rd of January, moving new compactors in. We have 10 brand new compaction units at our 7 locations, with a spare that we intend to use sometime this year at the Tower Road landfill site. Because if we install another compactor there, it will actually save us money on the pulls that they have to do, because that is our highest volume facility that we have in solid waste. Next month, we will have a report for you, hopefully, for the month of January and for February. But we don't even have an invoice from Waste Pro yet for the month of January. The Hazardous Waste Trust Fund, which is a grant that we were able to take advantage of some 8 years ago, that Sandy and her staff and us with our staff is a grant where we can receive reimbursement for the previous year for some of the things that EPD requires us to do on that closed landfill. The monitoring that we have to do for methane and for groundwater. We have an engineering company that has been doing that for a number of years called Advanced Environmental Engineers. And they bill us every month. And Sandy system where we keep all of that separated, and then in January, we submit for reimbursement. This year, the reimbursement for 2021 for hazardous waste trust fund is $24,000 and some change. I think that's all I have. I think we're going to talk about that. The road paving list that has an agenda item.
Right.
Do you all have any questions? Let me ask you this. Have you had any feedback from any of our convenience centers on Waste Pro and the new vendor? All of our feedback is positive.
I have had some feedback on it, and it's been positive.
What they are doing, which we never could get the previous vendor to do, is when they come in to empty a container, a compaction container, they bring us a spare container with them, set it down, empty the full container, and put it right back in. So our downtime is maybe 15 minutes to where we're back in operation. That we could not do with waste management. Waste management had to haul the container to wherever they hauled it to. And we were down during that time having to use open top dumpsters. So if I would be interested to know if you get any complaints on Waste Pro, but so far everything is positive.
What's the status of the lift station?
Pardon?
What's the status of the lift station?
The contract has been signed. You all approved that, and Charlie has executed the contract. The plan is right now, Hubert, possibly the middle of February, but probably the third week in February, we will have what is called a pre-construction conference with the contractor, where we lay out the project, and he tells us, and we will ask for a timeline. One of the things that is happening with everything, I mean, Mike is experiencing, everybody's experiencing it, is with materials supplies. One of the interesting things about that force main there is the force main coming from the lift station back up top is a double-lined, high-density polyethylene welded pipe. And that is a very unique product, and only certain people can even deal with that kind of pipe. That's going to be the probably the biggest delay that we have. But the contractor, with the execution of the contract, he is already lining up suppliers and getting delivery times in anticipation of reconstruction.
All right, thank you, Jim. Update on the swimming pool from Stephen Wheeler.
Good morning, Chairman and David. I'm happy to say that we've got a signed contract with the engineering firm, and they're moving forward. Right now, I don't know exactly the date, the time that they think they can be finished, but sometime early next month, they should be finished on it. yesterday with Jim Smith's help, we moved 16 truckloads, 10 truckloads of compactable dirt, which is measured out at 150 with 17% water ratio. That will pack down just like a concrete onto that floor, which we've got to raise it. Jim's got 2 more trucks out there today. We're going to bring in about 16 more truckloads. We're putting them out at the site out where the right beside the pool on the grassy area where the tennis courts are, putting it in there. And that'll be ready for packing. That's where we are right now. I think we're on better course than we've been in the past.
So you think early next month we'll have the engineered drawings?
Kevin's talking to him more than I am about that. He's been sort of in charge of the alignment of the pool, getting everything set up for the contract, and he's more in tune with exactly what we want to put in the pool. I've talked to him, was in a meeting with him about the pool. Lloyd was in the meeting where we rearranged the diving well, so forth. So I'm going to call them either today or tomorrow and see. I didn't want to push them, but I wanted to see where we are on the pool engineering. Fine line between pushing and asking. So.
I'm going to say that I'm cautiously hopeful. We'll have it on the agenda for next month. And I'm cautiously hopeful that we'll be able to vote to put it out to bid. If not, you know, we may want to do a special call after that and not wait a whole another month for it. So.
All right, any other?
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
All right, unfinished business, discussion and possible action of land use ordinance. We had talked about the possibility of creating a committee to look into any potential changes that we needed to make to the land use ordinance in order to make sure that that these very large subdivisions that are coming around don't negatively impact the county financially. I've been reminded that we actually have a committee that is tasked with that exact sort of project, and that is the planning committee. That is part of their responsibilities. So I would suggest that rather than us try to create a whole other committee, that we just ask them to have that discussion amongst themselves and come back with a recommendation for us as to what, if anything, they think that might need to be changed. That will probably be good news to some of these folks that really got set on fire when I said I didn't think we should have zealots on that committee. I think a lot of people took that a whole lot differently than I meant it. I read a nice definition of a zealot in the paper today. I won't give the whole thing, but it had the word uncompromising in it, which was my concern when I was talking about zealots on both sides. You know, people assume I'm talking about zealots just for those who want to limit growth, but we have zealots on both sides. Anyway, this will eliminate that potential at all. We just asked the planning commission, the planning committee, to our planning board to see if they can make some recommendations to us. Any other questions on that one?
I think that'd have to be a lengthy process if they really look at it. carefully examine it.
I agree.
May not be any changes, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, this is not guaranteed that we're gonna end up with very many changes. And it will be a lengthy process, it's just something that we need to go through, I think. Approval of the application of Hot Vineyards and Winery for a farm winery license. Karen can't be with us today. She's facing her own employee crisis right now and trying to deal with that. But everything, as I understand it, is in place for this, and there would be no reason I'm aware of that we would not approve that.
No problem.
Yeah, we actually approved it last month, but there was no
Yeah, we had
advertising.
to turn around.
Right, yes, sir.
Okay, discussion, possible action with Georgia Power easements. I've got some pictures here. The only change to what we had initially approved on that, on the request, is one additional piece of equipment that they want to put into the right of way. They have indicated that it would go in the grassy section and would not take up any parking maybe.
Is that building authority or county?
I believe that's county. We had already approved the easement, but they just want to add one piece of equipment to what the contract states.
It's okay.
So to add that one piece of equipment, we'll have to approve it again.
I thought we approved it earlier, the building authority.
Oh,
I
wasn't it?
didn't think we approved anything.
I thought we had approved Georgia Power. We approved some, but that some was really
Approved
approved.
Georgia Power down
River
in
Park.
Park.
That may very well be. I'll verify that. Oh, wait a minute, this picture may tell us. Because this came straight from the tax assessor's website. It says the owner is Gilmer County, 1 Broad Street.
I don't think we're allowed that building.
Yeah,
We'll verify
I
it.
didn't want to say that, but I believe, you may be right, I believe this may actually be the building authorities.
Works for me. I'd rather they have to deal with it than us.
I can confirm that for all meeting, but
Okay.
it's the building authority.
Okay, good. So we can know that by tomorrow night then?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Does that work for y'all?
Absolutely.
Okay. Then moving on. If no one has discussion items, we'll start with item 11 that we've moved up, which is discussion of possible action on White Path Golf Course equipment lease.
This item is the golf carts that we discussed in our budget meeting. And David, you can probably explain what we need today, a whole lot of that.
They're just in a resolution by the board here authorizing the entry of the chairman and the county at this. Just would be the standard typical procedural documents that are associated with it. And I don't think, Mike, that y'all are expected to take the river for quite a while on these as well.
I spoke with them last week. We're looking instead of June, possibly July. So
gas or water?
No, this is easy to go. They're in Athens, that's the,
Mike, why don't you describe the carts for those that are in attendance that may not be familiar with them, because they have some really neat features.
they do, they're 2022s. What the feature that we needed the most was the GPS. We had to have a GPS, which costs a little more, but we're getting so busy and people are taking the golf carts where they shouldn't go. You set your perimeters up, if that golf cart crosses that perimeter, the cart shuts off. And the only way they can go is backwards. So if it's cart path only, if it's cart path only, and I want them to stay on the cart path because it's wet, they get off the cart path, the cart's gonna quit. You have to put it in reverse, back it up. It saves the cart and it saves the whole track. That's the whole meaning behind it. Really.
So you go around backwards on
Take the fun out of it.
Well, hey, I've had them leave 12 and hang a right to go to the winery. Stop that.
Taking the fun out of it.
Hey, Robbie, you're getting trouble.
And I guess you can keep the carts you have now until you get the new ones.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Matt. Which brings us to zonings. The first one is for Cecil and Dorothy Townley. They would like to split from a large tract for their daughter to build a home. The only question I have about it, and let me get to that question. Okay, this is it's 2.368 acres. I looked at the right one. Yeah. It's to split off part of this property to build a home. Would that not leave an invalid property? If we zone this R1 and then split, let's say, an acre and a half off of it?
They're actually only asking for the split to be rezoned. They're gonna leave the remainder in the agricultural. And I believe, when we go back, but it's about 30-something acres, so there'll be sufficient acreage.
Okay, so when this says size of property, 2.368 acres, what they're really saying is that's what they want to split off from?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, then I have no questions on that. For myself, I'm okay with it.
I'm good.
For Lamar Walker, from R1 to A1 for a hobby farm. Personally, I have no problem with it.
Mine as well.
Jason and Leslie Prophet, they would like to convert an old church to a residence, C1 to R1. Personally, I'm fine with it.
I'm good.
Jonathan Graves, from R1 to A1 for a hobby livestock farm and a residence. This one, I believe, was recommended for denial. And I've received some letters on it. On both sides, I've received communications that say, please deny this, accept the denial. And also some that said, you know, if the other hobby farm was approved, why is this one being denied? And I don't have an answer for that. I don't know exactly what the reason for denial was.
As I understand it, middle of a subdivision.
Oh,
It
okay.
is. It's all residential around,
I understand now, okay.
and the other one does border agriculture and residential, but also there are many neighbors that complained in this,
Yeah, I've been hearing
that
that.
did not, but in the other one, there were no complaints around.
Personally, I'm okay with accepting the recommendation for denial.
Correct.
And as well.
Boyd Jackson Reese from A1 agricultural to R1 residential low density. This is to build 2 single-family homes per year. I think it was 10 point something acres.
It is.
Okay. So at 10.8, they can, that's agree. So they can build 6 houses total. And this is, on Parker Road. This is, not one of the areas that I'm especially concerned about for infrastructure. And for 6 homes, personally, I'm okay with it.
I'm good.
I am as well. I think he wants to build some homes that, in that area, and the hot word is affordable, but that will help some of the farmers and those that live out there.
Good.
Because I appreciate Mr. Reese doing that.
Yeah. Okay, Winona Watkins Dupree from A1 agricultural to R1 residential low density. This is to sell 1.64 acres to the adjacent owner. I think this one might have been. Okay, they want to sell 1.64 acres of a 22.64 acre property. They're asking for rezoning from A1 to R1. I just want to be clear that the rezoning is only for the 1.64 acres, and not for the entire.
Is that correct, Alderson?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
So we need to just make sure.
Well, we can specify it when we.
1.64 of 22.
Okay.
Is there a plat attached to y'all's material?
Let's see. Yeah.
Or the 1.64?
No.
Oh, I don't see that.
Because it's, we're seeing 22.64 acres.
I think that y'all's approval needs to be subject to review of that plat. I don't see it in my much. Did y'all receive it, Jim, at the meeting, do you recall?
I was thinking we did.
Yeah, I can't imagine that you wouldn't. I didn't mean to single call you out, Jim.
I'm glad you did.
Yes, he
You know
did,
he's out
Jim.
there.
I mean, Karen Juice was very thorough, has everything in the package.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing y'all need to know specifically where that 1.64 acres is, so that you're not creating an island or anything. Because I can't tell, I can see on the old plat, which is really remarkable, it's one of the old grid plats. That thing's probably a 1960 something plat, actually it looks like it's 1957. I don't see where the 1.64.
We can have that by tomorrow night.
Somebody making note. Karen,
I'll text you.
okay. It's like, you making note? I'm trying to.
Okay. All right, for Citizen Corporation, from A1 agricultural to R1 residential low density, this will be for single-family home subdivision, I believe, of 50 lots. Was the amount on that? I know I have ranted and raved about Atlanta developers and big city developers doing their thing, walking away. I want to say that I see Citizen as a very responsible local developer who has skin in the game, so to speak. From what I can tell on their other developments, they're responsible. In fact, they donated the property to us to put the Chairline Fire Station on, which you know, is the kind of thing that we've been talking about anyway. So, for myself, for that size and in that location, I'm okay with it.
I have no problem.
I am as well. They have always put out a quality product. They employ a lot of local folks, and
Right.
I think that property makes sense to go along with the great building that they've done in the past.
Well, we all know that there's going to be growth. We can't stop it. Don't really want to stop it completely. We just want to manage it, and in my mind, this is the kind of growth that we should be looking for. Which brings us to citizens wishing to speak. Anybody that wants to speak on any topic, just please not for 30 or 40 minutes each. So.
Kimberly Reckless, a proud zealot. When you all mentioned regarding item number 1 under unfinished business, the action on, possible action on land use ordinance, you mentioned that there's an existing planning committee in place.
Yes.
And that this planning committee is expected to resolve the issue they helped to create.
Well, this is one of the things that they are tasked with as a board.
Well, they failed last time, so putting the same people back on that board to make those decisions ought not be a thing. I mean, that's just practical common sense. So whether you want to have zealots on that committee to make some decisions or not, they need to be present because it is their planning, their decision-making that has enabled.
Well, it's everybody's decision-making in the county. I mean, it's for everybody.
I mean, technically,
But let me get back on the zealot thing, because that just seemed to catch fire. There are zealots on both sides of this. My only point when I said, no, we shouldn't put zealots on the committee was, I don't want a committee. The definition of zealot was uncompromising, and there was another word, and I can't remember what it was, but basically it was, you know, never quit kind of thing. So never quit, uncompromising. If we've got people on both sides of this, on that committee, they're never going to get anything done. They're just going to fight, and that's going to be the end of it. So I just felt like the people that are on there should be people who are able to have an open mind, and according to the definition of zealots, that's not the case.
right, so I guess that what you consider not having an open mind to you might be different than what it is to me. There's nothing wrong with being hard-lined. That's called being principled. That's called having a point of argument that you are firm in your commitments for
You're
your
right.
convictions.
There's nothing wrong with it, but if everybody is hardline, nobody's going to give on either side. Nothing will get done.
What we have right now, Chairman, is a group of people who have created the situation, and we have overdevelopment happening all around us. So I'd say that that board is comprised of individuals who are hardline on the opposite pro-growth end. So where they may not want to have an argument because they're used to working in an echo chamber, okay, where whatever they decide, they just scratch each other's backs and they get whatever they want. Because nobody is going to argue against them. In a healthy society, in a functioning community, you have got to have opinions on both sides. And it may not always be pretty, and it may not always sound nice, and it may not be the way things have been done typically around here. But I think this is the time to begin to incorporate an opposing perspective, a view from individuals within the county that don't share the same ideas about what Gilmer County looks like 20 years from now. Because when I look at, Travis Crouch, at his vision for Gilmer County, and of course he was part of the Catalyst group, of which Post 2 Commissioner Karleen Ferguson was a member. That decision was to make Gilmer County, closed it with a place that Bill Gates would like to come and build his businesses. I'm sorry, but I don't know of anybody in Gilmer County who shares that perspective. And so if we have on that one extreme, okay, you have people who are openly saying, we want Bill Gates the world to come to Gilmer County. Well, we gotta have some people on the other extreme, because that's pretty darn extreme to me. I don't know of anybody here who'd like to have Bill Gates in their backyard. So I'm putting my name in the hat to be considered for that committee. And I will work with them. And I am a reasonable person, but I am going to be hardlined on some issues, obviously. I mean, if you want me to join the bandwagon with bringing Bill Gates up here, I'm not going to say, let's do it, let's have him come up here. But if you say, hey, you're not being realistic, you're not considering this, hey, tell me, talk to me. I might be the best advocate you have if you include me in it instead of excluding me and people like myself from the process.
Planning Commission meetings are always open, and it receives input.
Well, that planning committee, if they're always open and always are open to input, why have they not produced any kind of resolution to resolve any of this housing overdevelopment that we're having?
Well, I really don't think that's what they're tasked to do. They're tasked to look at individual requests and provide a recommendation to us, not to approve or disapprove, but to provide a recommendation to us, at least in the zoning issues, to approve or deny. Now, there are things that they can approve, setbacks and subdivisions that don't require zoning and so forth on their own. But part of the things that they're tasked with, and we looked at this when we were deciding that, okay, well, they were already tasked with doing this sort of thing, is not to look at housing problems and come up with recommendations for solutions. We may want to task them with that going forward, but as of now, they're not.
Well, as you know, Commissioner, the problem is not out in empty lots. We've got a plethora of them. We've got thousands of empty lots between Kusawati and now the big mega subdivisions that have gone in. We don't need more developed lots, okay? That's not the problem. The problem is the quality of life for the people who live in those areas. There's a lot of construction, there are narrow roads, they're just quality of life issues for folks here. Then you've got your impact of waterways, okay? If you all want to make Gilmer County a big tourist attraction for rafting and whatnot, okay, more power to you, okay? But that has an impact on our waterways. That's water we drink, okay? All those septic tanks is going to go into the groundwater that we drink and shower in. We have wells that do run dry. I mean, we're not talking about Mr. Sisson and Mr. DuPont co-opting a 50 unit subdivision here. We have significant regional impact on our natural resources. And that must be addressed. And if that's not being addressed by this planning committee, if that's not the top of the list, what is on this list?
Here's the thing. And if you get into social media, which I'm probably not going to anymore, and you read through it, you see a lot of criticism about, in terms of quality of life, this is going to destroy my beautiful view. True, I'm sure, quality of life is here. But you can't tell somebody who's gone out and bought property and wants to build and live on that property that you can't do that because you're going to get in the way of my view. If the view is important, if it's important not to have somebody next to you, and I understand that not everybody can do this. It was important for me not to have people right next to me, so I bought the lots around. That's the only way you can really do it. You can't move in somewhere. Somebody else owns a lot next door or across the street, and then you tell them, well, you can't do anything with it because you're going to mess up my view. We can't do that.
Well, obviously not. And that there's a difference between an individual property owner's right to build on their own property. I'm extreme in that way. You know, if you want to put a hobby farm on your property, you want to have a burn pile on a clear day and winds aren't blowing, you want to have your chickens roaming and you want whatever to zero in your scope, I'm all about that. That's your right. That's your property. As long as you're not harming anybody else in the process. But there's a difference between an individual property owner's rights, a right to build, and a developer, because that person, that developer, their interest is money. Their interest is not in, that is not where they live. That's not their primary residence. So we're talking about business in actuality versus private home ownership.
And that is one reason that I feel like I'm a harder sell on a large subdivision, particularly people who have no skin in the game. They're coming in from Atlanta, they're buying, they're building, they're leaving. At the same time, though, they bought the property, they own it. It's their money that they put into it. If we could say, well, no more Atlanta builders can come up here and buy property. It's ridiculous, you can't do it, but I probably wouldn't mind seeing it. But they can. And there's only so far that we can go. From my perspective, and I think really from most everybody's perspective up here, what it's about is infrastructure. The primary infrastructure to me is roads. That's why I've been very verbal that I'm not in favor of any more large subdivisions out on Yukon or Clear Creek. Since those schools are out there, the traffic is horrendous on those roads at certain times of day. There's some areas of the county that a couple of hundred lots would be disastrous for us in terms of road maintenance and managing traffic and that sort of thing. There are a number of other parts of the county where roads would be fine. There's access, there's no problem. And to me, I want to look at those kind of things. Water, you mentioned that. That's an issue. If there's some indication that there's a problem with the water table at that location, septic systems are an issue, but that's not our issue. That's for the health department. It's their job to determine if a septic system is safe and won't harm around it. And if they determine that it's not safe, it'll create harm, it'll leach into a stream, whatever, they'll deny it. And when they deny it, that just kind of ends the whole thing. The idea of people coming in and wanting to rezone, now that's something that I get interested in. If somebody buys property that's ag, one house per 5 acres, and they do it on the assumption that they want to come to us and have it rezoned to R5. And then R5 really is not quite good enough because we limit it to 4 units per acre on R5. But I'm told that we need to raise that to 15. You know, I have problems with those things, but they're not the kind of problems that these people don't have a right to do this or a right to do that with their property. My problems are this property is not suitable for this to be done or that to be done, which is a fine distinction, but it is a distinction. I really, there's a lot of opposition to zoning generally here. And I'm one of those folks, always have been. If it's my property, you don't tell me what I can do on it. And most of the people here feel that way until the motocross thing is scheduled to go in next door. And then all of a sudden, no, you know, we can't allow that. And rightfully so, and that's where zoning is, protects quality of life and so forth. And I'm starting to get redundant, so I'm going to stop.
Well, I mean, I've had this experience myself. You know, I have an easement through my property where there's a property that's for sale next to me. The couple passed away. I split that 1 10-acre parcel into 2. I'm not complaining about that. That's, you know, I'm a reasonable person. Behind me is subdivision that was defunct from years ago. Went in, let's see me here fighting any of that. You know, I accept that in your backyard, literally in mine, things like this happen. Sometimes traffic gets increased on your private road with an easement for access. What I'm talking about here is this disparity between the average person who just wants to do with his own property versus what developers, the leeway they are given. Now, Mr. DuPont is a nice enough guy, but he's got neighbors there who are not happy about having, well, we don't really know how many units are going to go in there because he's been approved without even presenting a plan. You all, the Planning and Zoning Commission said, sure, great, good job, let's move forward with that. And you all just said, yeah, let's do it. Nobody has any idea what that's actually going to look like and how it's going to impact the people who are living there. That's a disparity. Because back there in the back row sits Mr. and Mrs. Graves, who their backyard is a subdivision. They're not a subdivision. And their front yard is commercial property. Okay? At some point, since that was all agricultural land, because this is Gilmer County, their variance was granted for commercial. A variance was granted for that subdivision. All they want to do is return to the original agricultural zoning so they can grow their own food and have a house for their family where they, I believe, homeschool. And I've gotten to know them through this process somewhat. There's a disparity. And you are going to, whether it's a result of your decision making that's causing a rift between your community because you're out of touch with what we're experiencing out here, so it seems. So when you want to grant Mr. DuPont and Sisson a variance against the will of the people who live in that area, okay. I'll oppose, but y'all are going to do whatever you want to do. But I can't wrap my head around why a young family is being denied a variance to return to the original zoning for their own private property, so they can have a handful. They already have chickens there. They've already got small livestock there. They're already doing it. They just want to be able to make it formal and build a house on there. And maybe you all can explain to me why, or maybe you just didn't understand what's happening out there well enough. Maybe y'all can explain it to us why that was denied while Mr. Sisson was granted.
First of all, there's no comparison between the two. Two totally separate situations. So whatever we approve for Mr. Sisson has no bearing on the other. This is the one that I asked what was the recommendation for denial, and it was because it would create an island in the middle of a large area that was what, A1 and R1?
It would have created an island in the middle of an R1
Right.
district.
So sometimes.
Commercial, just so you got the commercial, create that island already.
There are 3 commercials, I'm not gonna argue.
They're in their literal front yard, I mean adjoining properties, commercial.
Yeah, there are some things that have been there since day one that we're not supposed to allow going forward. And I know that people get upset when we say that when zoning was initially implemented, and I wasn't here at the time. Just like everybody else, I asked, how did this happen, and I was told. But people were allowed to basically select their zone. I mean, you gotta classify them some way, initially. And what I'm told is that that's what happened. People could make it their property zone, however they wanted to be at that time. So,
I think what you're asking us to do is take Kusawati and put 5 acres agricultural in the middle. It's the same kind of thing. Because it's a residential area. I understood it's all run all around it. In the middle, you want to take one and make it agricultural. Is that not the same comparison?
Well, I don't want to do anything, it's not my property.
I understand, you made the case.
Right, so the case is this, you've got residential, a hobby farm you're going to live on, it is residential. I'm not looking to change it from being residential. We're looking to make them allowed to lawfully have more livestock on their property. And that the neighbors have agreed to come some sort of decision, agreement that will limit your chickens to this many, or limit your small livestock to this many. The local neighbors there are not saying, and I was in the meeting, I didn't have private discussions, it was an open meeting. We'll allow it, we just want to have some discussion about it. So if they're willing to have some discussion about it, and you all are saying, no, we won't discuss it, but you're also taking into consideration their opposition, and you're making your decision based upon their opposition. I think some more discussion needs to happen here before you all make a decision, one way or another.
Let me tell you, they asked for a property to go from R1 to agriculture. That is what they're asking for. That is what is being denied. Because it doesn't matter, they could sell the property and it could be something else down the road. We have to look at future. You change that and you create a hole in the middle of this residential property. That's why. I want to go to something else you said, because you once again are making false statements about me. I have never been on the Catalyst board.
You signed into
I would have been honored to be on the Catalyst board because there are some fine people that were part of that were leaders and visionaries of this community. And I thank God for them. So I have sat in on some of their meetings, but I would never was on that board. So that's one. Planning and Zoning Commission has done an incredible job for what they have been tasked to do this year. They have put up with so many long meetings. They went through hours and hours and hours of special work sessions to create the new ordinances that unfortunately came into place after some of these large subdivisions happened. We were behind the 8 ball on that. Everybody knows that. But unfortunately also, those subdivisions did not ever ask for zoning changes. Many of those larger subdivisions, many of them already had the proper zoning in place to do what they wanted, to do what they were able to do. So we came and realized, and it takes months. You can't just decide next week I'm going to change the law. You have to go through a process to give the public plenty of time to come and speak, which we did. I don't even know how many meetings we had with the Planning Commission over changing the ordinances. And it took probably, I don't know, Jim, 6 or 8 months, Charlie, Hubert, to get to that point. So we worked very hard. They worked very hard. We worked very hard. All of us worked very hard to get to where we are. We have got some good new ordinances in place. We see a few more areas that we could tweak, and that's what we were asking the Planning Commission to go back and discuss and see if there's some tweaks that might be made to really prevent those larger subdivisions. I'm for impact fees, but I don't want them to affect our smaller builders. So there's some things that they are professional and in the field to know how to maybe do some tweaking to make our much better ordinances even better. They have to, granted, again, some of these subdivisions started before our ordinances were in place. So we're going to have to do some catch up with roads. And fortunately, we are working with some of the developers on some of the road situations. And hopefully they'll continue to work on some of those. What else did you? I'm sure that the Planning Commission will have special called work sessions, is my guess, that the public is totally invited to be part of. You can speak your voice. Anyone can speak their voice at those meetings. They are always open to the public. So this is not, you can still voice your opinion. Anyone can voice their opinion at those meetings. But there is a process in place. They have the most, they're more equipped than we are, honestly, to make some of those suggestions because they talk about it monthly and they go to classes and they know what they're talking about, what they can do, along with Karen's guidance. So, that's my say.
Well, let me just say that I was at a town hall meeting, Mrs. Ferguson, where you were in attendance, the guest speaker, where the housing issue luckily was addressed. You said that one of your first visions, like day one, you hit the ground, you and Kent Sanford hit the ground and went to go meet with the Home Builders Association, on which Mr. DuPont, who sought variance today, and it looks like he's getting it, to take away the ability of private homeowners to have tiny homes, okay, on their property, and live in their campers. Okay. On the one hand, you're limiting, that was your out of the gate move. Admittedly, I can play it here if you'd like me to, your own voice, if you want to be patient with me. But I won't go to that. It's available online. Let me just say, you cannot continue this policy of negatively impacting the individual property owners here in Gilmer County and forsaking them for the vision that you all have for Gilmer County. And you may not like that there's a hobby farm in the middle of a subdivision or with a subdivision adjoining a subdivision. I promise you they're not too crazy about having a subdivision in their backyard or commercial property. But we work with what we have. They have the opportunity, the land they have is the land they have. And we've got to, you all have got to start listening to people, or you're going to have a lot more people who are hot under the collar like myself. Because whether or not you see it as a quality of life issue, or a property rights issue, or however you all want to digest it from where you all sit, from where we all sit, it feels an awful lot like there's a two-class system here.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the commission, staff, my name is Tom Watley, 76 Glenview Trail. It's not ready to get my address, some people are.
With regard to the, well,
Tom, before you get started,
yes, sir.
along about this time, every year, or every election year,
Yes, sir.
we generally have a policy that when you come up and speak, you can say, I'm Tom Wally and I'm a candidate for post commissioner.
I have no problem with that, because some people may not know that, so.
I know you don't have a problem with it, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but it's just a full disclosure thing.
Okay, full disclosure, I'm Tom Walby, I'm running for County Commissioner, Post 2. Oh, yes, sir, Mr. Parker. With regard to planning and zoning, and I do respect those folks, they have a tough job, and they do have long hours. I've been there for quite a while, and a couple of them do play very fair on there, you can see it. They try and play fair. Even Mr. Walker, I believe, actually said he didn't have a problem with Hobby Farm. He was the only dissenting vote on that decision. But what I would like to see is if we're, I think we really need to involve the citizenry along with them, if it's workshops or if it's just, subcommittee meetings involving planning and zoning and some citizenry out there who've been vocal, not necessarily myself because I'm running, so that may eliminate me from even being on any committees, I don't know, but you've got a lot of people that have some good input, good ideas. I realize that the meetings are open, but if they work together as a coalition instead of coming up and addressing the governing board, and they're working together as citizens, I think you can get a lot more accomplished. I don't see the zealot thing. I see compromise. I see that, say, if you, Mr. Chairman, you appoint 2 or 3 members, or if Chairman Mooney appoints a couple of members to this subcommittee, along with whoever y'all want to, as far as having citizenry on there, say each one of y'all pick some, one of your favorites that that would do a good job on that, and you put them all together, I think then the discussion comes on, because then you've got part of the group that's locked in on the county ordinances and what they can and can't do. Then you got some citizens who say, well, here's another idea, and it may fall into, into what they're trying to do. So I'm just suggesting perhaps a subcommittee that is comprised of our appointees on planning and zoning and some people out in the public that you all know would represent also your interests as well, because that's what you do when you appoint people. At the last planning and zoning meeting, Mr. Mooney said something that struck me with regard to grades. And he was actually correct when he said this. He said, you should have thought about this before you bought it and tried to get zoning changed before you bought it. And we've seen this where many builders, especially our Atlanta-based builders, will come up like the property over there by Ingles with 4-way stop. That was $500,000 contingency upon getting the zoning changed. So when they did that, that sent a message, okay, I got to go before planning and zoning. Now see, he's R1. I believe that property is R1 and that total, both tracks, 30 acres. Now what happens is he can just come in and just think I heard something along the lines of 12 homes are going in there now. But he doesn't have to come before you. Right. So that, let me segue into the next. I'll try not to eat up your time because I know it's a long day for you. But now, I believe that we should have a county ordinance along the lines of, and y'all would pick a number through debate and through public input, say 25 homes and up, regardless of how it's zoned. Let's say there's odd number that there happens by chance 100 acres sitting out there zoned R1 because there was a house in the whatever. They have to come before the planning and zoning. If it's say 25 homes or more. And that way there could be public input, but sometimes y'all don't know about it, you don't hear about it until you start getting complaints in your email box. And I think that would also help us with the Atlanta-based builders as well, because I don't want anything taken away from our local builders. There's a couple of them sitting out there that I recognize. And I think this would actually help the local builders. And I gotta tell you, Atlanta builders, they do nothing for us. Zero. They come in with their own labor. They do a hit and run. They offer nothing to the infrastructure. They use their own real estate agents out of Atlanta. They do their own marketing down there. I'm not seeing a whole lot of benefit for the residents who live there, the tax-paying constituents who live there. So I'm thinking that by doing this also, it puts a little bit of a, they got to take that extra step now, these Atlanta builders, because they're going to hone in. If they can find something that's R1 and they can put a whole bunch of houses on it, they're going to do it. Or R4, they're going to do it, and they can get away with it, and they can put a whole bunch of units. So when Mr. Mooney said that to the Graves, you should have gotten that changed. Most of them, some of them do that. They actually do have a contingency within a real estate contract. And not to take away from Mr. DuPont, because I believe he actually met the criteria to get his land approved, but he submitted nothing. The plans, nothing. I know he's done a lot for the community and donated, I get it. But he should have been in that same category, that if he wanted to change the zoning on that, he should have gotten that done before they purchased the property, just like everybody else. And that's just the way I feel, so, I appreciate any input, and I'll let you close it up.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Board, appreciate it.
One comment that I would like to make is, and Tony, this is directly related to what you were saying, that Mr. Gray should have maybe checked first. When I very first took office, there were a couple of things that came up. I don't remember what they were 7 years ago, I couldn't tell you, but essentially it was people who were wanting to come into R1 areas.
Yes, sir.
Similar situation to this, I guess, and rezone to A1 or C1 or whatever. And I heard from a number of homeowners associations at that time. Probably, I don't know that I hear from them all now, but at that time I was the president of our homeowners association, and so they were, I guess, more of a community, and they felt free to come and talk to me. But the point that they all made was, if we come in and we do our homework and we buy property that's not just R1, but surrounded by R1, because we don't want a convenience store, or we don't want chicken houses, for instance, whatever. And for whoever purposes, I'm not knocking chicken houses. But they're saying, if we come in and we do our homework and we buy that property because it meets everything, shouldn't you protect us from changing that after we've come in, we've checked, we've bought in a good place?
Yes, sir.
And now somebody else comes in, maybe they didn't check, or maybe they did, and they're still more than likely to buy the property and change it. We feel that you need to protect us from that sort of a thing, and honor the fact that we've done our homework, and this is what we bought into.
Yes, sir.
I think it's a good opposite point from what you made. Same point, just on opposite sides.
Yes, sir. And I would say when Mr. Parker mentioned that the Graves case is in the middle of the subdivision, it's not. It's surrounded, but he's not in a subdivision. He's out there on a gravel road. Was it 6 acres? I think it's 6 acres. So he's only asking for, I believe, 1 acre for a change. So I didn't see a problem with it. You did have one dissenting vote on it. So when it's that much acreage, and 6 acres is not unreasonable to put livestock on, I believe. So he just happened to be surrounded by commercial and some R1. So that's one of the decisions I would have actually voted for him to have. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Graves.
Hey, Charlie, before you begin speaking, y'all are getting into quicksand with respect to,
Yeah, before we were talking very generally.
yeah, y'all, and I also want to clear up one thing. The planning commission is made up of citizens. It's not a designated special group of people that have a certain class. They are citizens within the community, and their composition is widely varied as well. So I do want everyone to understand that the planning commission is citizens of the county, and that's one of the requirements to participate or to serve on that board. But I believe, Mr. Graves, and I don't need to interject, but I believe you're wishing to address your rezoning and perhaps to state some of your feelings as to why it should have been granted and not have been denied. Is that correct?
Well, if I could just have a moment to just clarify an argument that was made today about it.
I'm gonna let the chair decide that. However, typically, this board is not positioned nor charged with rehearing elements that could have been presented at the planning commission meeting. Is this something that was presented at the planning commission meeting that we could refer them to in the records that's already been created and exists?
I was referring to a statement that was made in regards to the property and what's around it. That's what I was talking about.
I wouldn't let it be a lengthy presentation, Charlie.
If you can just correct a statement about what's around it very quickly, we can allow that.
Okay. Yeah, just so we understand, what was said is that my property is in the middle of a subdivision. Well, that may be the case, but there is also commercial property which is adjacent to my lot. And beforehand, before it was divided, it was commercial. As far as I know, it was agriculture before that. So there's no reason why it shouldn't be considered agricultural.
And I think now we're getting into the argument part of it. So we've corrected the statement that it was in the middle of subdivisions. I think probably the more accurate, and I believe Commissioner Parker would agree, would be to say that it's in the middle of our wards. Correct. Which may or may not be subdivisions.
Okay, so a majority of the property on the other side of the subdivision is all A1 too. So the subdivision is actually in the middle of A1.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else who would like to speak?
John Allgaier, River Hill Road. I'm really having a hard time trying to wrap my head around this thing where a development is getting approved, in the process of getting approved, without a plan. Although I do understand that there's a working relationship with those people, and they've done some things that are good, and they have a past history. But I think there should be a process. I think there is a process, and I don't think the criteria of the process was met, because I just don't understand how you can approve any kind of a development without a set of plans or impact statements and that sort of thing.
Can I comment on that real quick?
Sure.
We did not, nobody will.
It's not been approved,
It's not been
I understand.
approved, but that was not what was approved. What was approved, or what was suggested from the Planning and Zoning Commission, is that we approve them asking to go from agricultural to R1.
Right.
So that was what was asked.
We didn't approve
There's
the
a later
subdivision.
process.
And then it streamlines from there.
There's a later process that they would have their plat approved, and so it's a process.
All right, thank you. Because the other half of that argument that I made with myself is we've spent more time talking about a hobby farm than something that's going to impact the county.
And also,
then
I'll
go
say
ahead.
with that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'll also say with that, if they were denied to go to R1, they could have built it with the agriculture. So they don't really have to show us, they just have to change the zone.
But
Okay, and I'm still trying to understand the
Right,
process.
so they can, if we would have denied them, they could build out as if it were ag,
Okay,
you know, and do the 5 acre.
one comment that I would make, though, in terms of the plan, is the request was to go from A1 to R1. There's a different number of lots in a subdivision that you can have with R1 versus A1. I don't think that they could have created a plan without knowing whether they were going to be R1 or A1, because the number of lots would be drastically different depending on which way it goes.
Well-
So they'll still have to do the plan, but now they know to do it
sure.
based on R1 conditions.
I read a comment in the newspaper, and I think, you know, if I was buying some land, I would think, well, under agriculture, I could build 20 houses, and under R, I could build 60. I would know that in my head already before I put the money out. And so.
And many people do. I don't know if this is a situation, I haven't asked, and honestly, I really don't care, but this may not necessarily be the case where they've gone out and recently bought this, because Citizen owns a lot of property.
Sure.
I don't know how long they've even owned this, but either way, and we have a lot of people who come in and make offers contingent. You know, I'll buy your 30 acres contingent on being able to get it rezoned to this or that. But if they already own this, then their only option would be to come in and just ask for rezoning.
The other side of what I wanted to bring up was, when you started the meeting out with that zealot word,
Yeah.
which I agree with. I think it's a very specific term, and it does describe people specifically. And so there are certain words in society that kind of inflame. I like to use them a lot myself for reaction purposes. One of the terms that's been used, though, incorrectly, I think, is the term subdivision. From what I'm seeing and hearing with this young couple that would put a couple extra chickens on their property, that just because you're R1, when somebody says subdivision, I think of Marietta,
Let's
Indian
talk about
Hills,
just
and 1
subdivisions
acre,
and
1
not
house
this
per
particular
acre.
one. Yep.
But if I'm on 6, I just think, I'll wrap it up, I think Gilmer County is the place for a hobby farm. And maybe we need to make allotments for that. We have chicken houses everywhere. And people, and of course we have the apples and a few vineyards, but people come in and they build their houses next to the chicken farms. And it's cool on certain days because the wind's blowing in the right direction. But to be able to grow your own food, and that's the trend, that maybe R1 needs to incorporate that or be amended slightly.
Well, I'm going to.
I'm not talking about a specific issue, but the specific issue brought this up in my mind.
I'm going to confess a certain amount of ignorance here. And some of it may be how you define growing your own food, because when you say that, I think of a garden. And I don't know anything preventing a garden on R1.
Chickens and rabbits.
Well, that would be a different thing, yeah.
And I've heard this term loosely thrown about this morning in the meeting, hobby farm. There's nothing that prevents them from having a hobby livestock, and that definition is found within the ordinance, and it does include chickens and goats and sheep, if I'm not mistaken. I can pull it up, but they are entitled under an R1 to have hobby livestock. What they are wishing to move to is agricultural, which is a wide open field with respect to livestock. So that R1 does not deny them a hobby farm as that term has been used today. Okay.
I just think the denial that seems to be looming is not a win-win for either side. Is there not any type of I'm talking off the hip now. Why can't it be zoned and then terminated when they die or move? I just think we need to embrace this concept and be a little bit more open-minded about it. And, you know, maybe the neighbors can get together and work out a solution. I remember the folks that were trying to build cabins in a tree house, and you know, in the end, everybody got together and they got bought out. So I think we need to try to help accommodate each other. My last comment was I want to reiterate was what Ms. Reckless said about the planning board, the zoning. I really think we either need to shake it up a little bit, put in a couple of new members, maybe take a couple out. It needs to be more representative of the community. Just because somebody is a resident and that's the only qualification. They live here, so that's their qualification for being there, but they're not a builder, they're not a developer. You know, we do have a lot of developers and builder background people there, and then maybe you have a couple of people. I don't know them personally, so I don't know, but I think we need to have some people that are really promoting Gilmer for what it is right now, and try to help preserve our heritage and our mountains on that board. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak on any topic? Good morning.
Debbie Wall, and I just happen to be one that has done my homework, and my husband and I worked for close to 5 years for our retirement. We started from one state board, so born and raised native. We went all the way from the coast, and I knew we wanted to be on a little bit of property, and somewhere where there was some water, just because I love nature. And we looked, and we came up to the mountains, because I want to go to the beach and enjoy that as a vacation. I got to thinking, I don't think I want to do it at the beach. The mountains, because we get your seasons, you have all your seasons. You also have the cooler climate, because, you know, the heat, I just am not real big on, you know, real hot temperatures. So we kept coming, and we'd always stop when we were going north. We thought we wanted to do a tree farm, so we were looking for a chunk of land. Because my husband kind of looks like Santa Claus, and we kind of do a gig. But anyway, we thought, God, I love bacon, I love doing things, I love, you know, having a garden. I love, you know, that kind of stuff too. And I thought, you know, this would be a little gig. Well, he would still, you know, needed to drive to the airport because he worked for Delta Airlines, which he does that 3 to 4 times a week. He's now retired from there after 33 years. But we kept looking, and we found this. We would always stop at parties to have our breakfast and to sit and plan out where we were going. I mean, we went all the way, you know, up past Blue Ridge, Notley Lake. I mean, you know, we were going, you know, all the way up past Blairsville. Anyway, and then we went Chattanooga. So we were going where we're not far from where our family is, because they are aging, and unfortunately, their health's failing them. And so we want to be close so that we can see them and it not be a long trip. But we'd stop at parties, and it's like, we sit there and we plan out where we're going, and it's like, why is God putting us here in Illinois? Why is it? And we rethought things, and we looked around, and we found our piece of paradise. We love, and we did look, and it was all houses that are R1, and which is around in the area that we, yes, we did go through some commercial area, which was mobile homes, trailers. But when you go into the private property that leads down to our property in the community that we're in, it was, you know, it was like, oh gosh, look at this little diamond in the rough, you know. These trailers were there, I don't know how long. Who owns them is some guy down in Florida. Someone up here takes care of the mobile homes. And I have watched since we have been here in 2015, them diminish and have trash outside, and really the drive coming to our place, you know, is really getting kind of ugly. There's mold, and the way that they fix it, they put planks up, cover up the mold, and still rent these places out. That's another issue. The piece of property, which is the Graves, backs up to ours. They have 6 acres. We purchased a lot that was a little over 2 acres, 2.3, something like that. Then we purchased another piece, because that's what you said. If you don't want any neighbors, purchase the property. We weren't wanting a big chunk of land to have to take care of, because we're retiring. You know, we don't want to have to deal with that. But now we have 3.32 acres. So we have half of what he has. And I can't see having, you know, livestock. I mean, you know, he purchased this property.
Well, one thing though is that we're really not allowed to discuss a specific zoning request in here, because it hasn't been advertised to the public to do that. The only place you can discuss a specific zoning request is in the planning and zoning meeting. So just keep your comments general.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was out of town on vacation when the meeting was with the planning and zoning. But I know there was representation for our community that was there. So, anyway, the property of ours backs up to his, and where he has placed his barn. And when he purchased the property, he purchased it as residential. He moved a camper in there. He was living in a camper, and he was going to build a home. Chicken coop's gone up, the barn's gone up. There's still no home, and it's been 2 years, a year and a half. So if they purchased it as a residential, and that's what it was, now he wants to change it to A1, it's kind of like he's putting an apartment full of horse.
But again,
like he already has this barn built.
But again, we can't discuss a specific rezoning request. That's legally, we're past the point where we can do that, because if we were going to do it, we would have had to have advertised a week ahead that there's going to be a discussion of that here. And we didn't, so according to state law, we can't.
I guess my point is on 6 acres, maybe you can answer me this. How many livestock, what is the law for livestock on 6 acres?
I know you can have so many chickens per acre.
I mean, are you talking with respect to agricultural zoning property?
If he gets it zoned over to A1.
Oh.
If he were rezoned to A1, there is no specific restriction other than what we term intensive livestock operations. However, there are some Department of Agricultural Georgia guidelines with respect. I mean, you could move 20 cattle in there. That actually may be the intensive livestock, but you could move probably 6 or 7 cattle in there without some agency becoming involved and saying that you were likely overtaxing that area. Because at best 6 acres may yield probably, after you subtract out the house and the accessory buildings and everything, may yield 4 or 5 acres at best. And that's just pretty intensive for that. But as a whole, agricultural doesn't have a restriction other than with respect to intensive livestock operations, which require a larger parcel or a larger tract of acreage to conduct those intensive livestock operations. So if it's rezoned, or any parcel as is A1, it can have a swine, it can have a horse, it can have cattle, up to where, and a lot of times it's our animal control officer that gets the complaint and makes the referral on that situation, where we term an inhumane condition for the animal. Agrees.
That was my concern, because where the barn is placed, this area down at the end of the property kind of stays wet. And so if there's like swine and cattle, you have a smell that comes with it.
Yeah, and we certainly appreciate the information that you're sharing, but all that information should have been vetted out at the public hearing, and that's what this board reviews, is that record, that transcript. and that's produced. And those hearings are very informative and they're very useful, and the planning commission takes their time in their deliberations and makes what they consider to be a good recommendation. May not always be a unanimous recommendation coming up, but I know somebody mentioned the composition of the board. As I know it, 3 of the members, it's a 5-member board, but 3 of the members aren't even affiliated with the construction and development industry. So I feel like that's an excellent composition. One is a retired, well, actually Paul's not retired yet, but he's a poultry farmer. And then one works with a local utility company, and another is a retired individual. She is retired. So, but that's a general statement as to the composition of that planning commission. Okay. But as to your answer on the agricultural, hopefully that answer is.
Thank you for your time. Like I said, I was out on vacation when the planning and zoning, that's why I wasn't able to address, and I tried to send emails and stuff.
And they've got those, they certainly do. Any record that you provided, they do have a copy of it, so they do have that before them, okay?
In terms of the trash and stuff from the trailer park, if you will give Sandy the name of it and the street, we'll try to get that taken care of. Just go ahead and tell her now. Anybody else that would like to speak? If not, we will move on. Next item will be discussion and possible action of Boundary Medical Operative IQ licensing agreement.
My name is Hubert, EMS Division Chief for Gilmer County Fire Rescue. Boundary is who we use for our medical supplies, and Operative IQ is a software system that we've been currently using for 7-8 years for our narcotics tracking, and this is to add on a license for that to track all of our EMS supplies, not only just our narcotics.
Okay. What is the, what will be the total cost over and above what we're paying now?
Over what we're paid currently, $46.50 for over the next 3 years.
Okay, so
it's $1,050 per year and $1,500 upfront for training and setup.
okay, so for $2,500 roughly. Okay.
And assume it's covered in your current budget.
Yes.
Those are covered in their current
Yeah,
budget.
when I started talking about it last year, contemplated into this.
Good, good.
So what are we being asked to do today?
Approve the contract.
The thing's already been signed, which concerns me. So I don't quite understand what's going on.
Well, that's true. This looks like it's an executed contract. If it's included, if it was included in the 22 budget, and that money approved, I wouldn't have a problem with the fact that they executed it. But then it brings us to your point about what we get asked today.
I thought contract, chairman was to sign.
And we've advised that for years now. I keep seeing this occurring where contracts are signed by individuals that don't have, and no disrespect, but don't have that authority to sign that contract. What I would suggest is y'all authorize the chairman to sign the contract and clean it up and get us another contract. If you're currently working under a contract, y'all can ratify any activity that's occurred under this one, but this purported contract isn't a valid contract because it hasn't been agreed to by the board of commissioners and authorized by the chairman to sign.
Have you looked at the conditions of it?
I did, and I didn't see a signed copy of it. My concern with it, when I initially looked at it, is the governing law was in the state of Ohio. However, these are contracts of adhesion, and I think Amber checked in on that, and the contractor, the vendor, refused to change that, so.
Yeah, that's where they want to.
Okay, so we-
Home location.
So we could approve this tomorrow night.
Yeah, I would encourage you to.
Okay.
Approve.
Not this one.
Not
This,
this time.
this contract will be voided, and another one presumably just like it would be presented to us.
Do we need to get word out somehow? Or they use it, like keep recurring?
I'll send a letter to the department heads and copy all of it. Get it. Hopefully they'll take care of it. But I'm okay with the contract that once you know we sign it properly, so, you know. So, thank you.
I hate to backtrack, but can I give y'all an update?
Yeah.
On that item number would be 6 on the agenda, which was with respect to the 1 little acres being cut out of the larger parcel.
Yeah.
I had sent Karen a text asking her for a copy of the plat. She has replied that the surveyor is on site right now. I'm not sure it will be finished. Would a draft be sufficient? That application is insufficient without the attachment of the plat. It will have to be remanded back and sent back to the planning commission because
Okay.
anybody that's affected by it needs to know where it's actually active. Right now, there's no true identification for that parcel.
Okay. All right. Thank you, David. Discussion and possible action on Gilmer County point of distribution. Keith, you want to enlighten us on that?
Good morning, Commissioners. The point of distribution plan is a plan that's pushed out, recommended, and actually in some instances required by GEMA, the state, for us to have in place in the event of a disaster or any type of emergency that happens in the county, where residents are without power for extended periods of time, and they have no ability to get out and get food and or water. You may have seen these sites developed or put up in different areas when hurricanes would blow through, and they would have tractor trailers with water, meals ready to eat, also known as MREs and things like that. This is one of those plans that's developed for our county, specific for us to identify sites where we would put up these points of distribution or pod locations throughout the county. It will be supported by GEMA, and it also in that plan describes all the elements we'd have to put in place once we activate a pod location for GEMA to provide those supplies to us via tractor trailers. It's all contracted through GEMA. This is a two-part thing to get the county back into, or get the county in compliance with what's called a disaster match program. The disaster match program, which is basically if we have a disaster in the county, FEMA, and it's a declared presidential disaster in the area, FEMA then, through the reimbursement process, would pay up to 75%. And if we are disaster match county, then that means that the state would be responsible for 12.5%, and the county would be responsible for 12.5%. This plan, once it gets adopted, is one of two plans that need to be completed. The second plan that you'll be seeing here in the next few months is the debris removal plan, the debris management plan, and that I'll be working with Jim Smith and some other contractors to be able to finish that plan and get that out of the vehicle within the next couple of months.
And this plan meets FEMA's requirements?
It does. It meets all the elements of FEMA and GEMA requirements.
Looks good to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Discussion and possible action authorizing a monthly expense allowance to the clerk of Superior Court. We have been advised that Georgia state law allows counties to approve a monthly expense allowance. There's no flexibility that we would have on the amount. It's dependent on the county population. In our case, would be $200 a month. Sandy, do we ever get a response from the other counties? Let me ask you for our surrounding counties, what do those folks do? None of them.
They don't have this.
They don't, well, they haven't executed approved. No, they don't. They don't do it. So, with that, I will open it for discussion.
I can't argue the way the law is written. Unaccountable expense allowance is permissible but not required.
Correct.
The only way I'd be willing to approve it if there's a specific written request from the clerk of the court. But I think as taxpayer dollars, that needs to be on the record. I just don't see a reason to do it otherwise. Particularly since the neighboring counties don't have it.
As far as I know, the only written request that we have is that for us, a request to consider it. Well, we can say that we need some consent, a request to approve it.
Well, the only thing I've seen in writing is bringing it to our attention. I don't see a request. Please pay me this. I don't see that request.
No, I think the only thing it says is, please consider it or something like that. I've got an email that says that. I'll look back to it.
She gives a code section and Pat's handling some other counties. Let me know if you need more information.
Okay. I can let her know that before we can even consider it, we need a written request from her.
I'd love to hear from Amy why, what they would be spending money on. It was just all a little uneasy for me on this.
You want me to ask her to be in attendance tomorrow night? Okay.
Unaccountable, so it wouldn't matter.
It just seems crazy.
I will ask her to be in attendance and to also, if she wants it, to send us an email stating that she would like for us to approve it.
I've spoken with y'all.
I don't understand.
My problem is that none of the surrounding counties are doing it, so I don't understand why we want to do it.
Do you have any other departments that are watching it out? Also, so, every penny is usually.
Well, I think we could, I don't know with elected officials. We have departments where there are some people who get, for instance, used to get a mileage allowance, so to speak, or vehicle allowance.
Get that.
But in terms of an elected official, I'm not sure we can just do that. I think we'd have to probably look at something like this law. But I don't know, because, all of our elected officials, there are stipends that have been voted in the past, one amount or another, that they get.
But those are mandatory, right?
No. I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was the tax commissioner, it may have been the clerk of court at that time, and asked for a stipend that was allowable but not required. They got it. You remember that story?
I'm trying to remember which office.
It was either tax commissioner or clerk of court, but I don't remember which one.
I know there are some
think that may have been it. I think it was this,
I think it was but it was because her office was serving in some capacity.
but it wasn't mandatory. It was allowed but not mandatory, because she actually had to come to us and request it, and we had to approve it. I don't remember what you call that.
There was reasoning behind it, but I can't remember the exact.
But
I can look back on it.
I'll ask Amy to tell the story now. Discussion, well, we've already discussed number 11. Discussion and possible action on the road paving list. We say this.
Okay, I'm going to try to explain this. Charlie complains about not being able to follow our madness and trying to keep up with our road construction list, road paving list, LMIG, and all of those things. So I've given you, what I'd like to start with is this sheet that has plain white and has road names, Oak Park Place Road, and then the last one down there at the bottom with asterisks is Woking. Now, this list is the list that we maintain, that Board of Commissioners from time to time during the year ask us to add such and such road to our road maintenance list. And what we keep that going year round, and we were using it primarily for LMIG up until this past year. And this past year, when we were able to actually contract out paving, because remember, we were trying to do it ourselves up until last year. Then we developed a contract paving list, which is the second sheet. Now, the road list that you have, that you were given last year, all of those roads are on there with the exception of Mulkey Road, that is number 33 and has the asterisk by it. And let me explain why. If you turn to the second sheet, you will see that I have added Mulkey Road to the contract paving list because it is an asphalt road. It is not tar and chip, and it's full of potholes, and it is a high traffic road. So that the contract paving list is what I want to discuss with you first. And that is the second sheet, and it's entitled Contract Paving List, and it has Mulkey Road added on it. I would like you to add that road to the road maintenance list in order for us to be able to bid Mulkey Road out for contract paving tomorrow night. Is that permissible?
It is.
Okay.
If we decide to do it, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
we had said once a year, but there's
Right.
no reason we can't do it more often.
Now, the one thing that, and I think Commissioner Parker brought it up, Howard Simmons Road. Howard Simmons Road, we have put on the contract paving list now, and it was an LMIG project for 2019. If you remember this list, now this is sometime back, it's not a part of the packet that yeah.
Well, it's a very complex list, so easily confused and
Okay.
easily forgotten. And when I complain about it to Jim, he says,
I'm getting old.
and I complain to Jim that I'm having trouble comprehending all this, and his response is, get over it.
When we submitted it in 2019, we were still doing paving, and we were trying to submit it as no make project. Now, if we have money left, and I haven't trouble with Sandy because she's all stressed out with auditors. If we have money left in the 2019 LMIG, then I have no problem in paying for it or a portion of it out of the 2019 LMIG. But we still have to include it on the contract paving because we have to develop the specifications for the contractor to be able to bid on it. I have an estimate on it, and it's about $300,000. So I don't know if that estimate is even good now. But I wanted to explain that for Hubert's benefit. Now, the next sheet that you have here is called 22 LMIG project report. Those are the roads that we have submitted to GDOT that came off the road maintenance list that has not been approved by GDOT as of yet. As soon as they are approved, then we will pull them off of the road maintenance list, and then we will add them as a LMIG approved project for 22. Based on the action that the commissioners took when you adopted the budget, now I'm going based on what I'm told, is this year we have about $1.5 million for contract payment. She shook her head yes. So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get the roads together that we can develop specifications for off of the road maintenance list in order for us to put them out for bid.
Jim, let me jump in on that.
Yes.
That the pot that we've got for additional road paving, the $1.5 million. I'm hopeful for this particular item that we may have some other means of funding, but there's no guarantee on that. We have got a lot of roads in Gilmer County that are not necessarily going to be paved or repaved, but that have got to be restriped.
And we have a list started of roads to restripe, and these are working lists, folks, so
Yeah.
they're not, you know, this is not cast in stone, and we will add to them.
And currently, we have $50,000, I believe.
That is
allotted for
correct.
that, but that's not going to touch it.
That's true.
I think we're probably looking at 200 or more.
Well, one of the problems, Mr. Chairman, that we ran into with last year's project, and again, because of the pandemic and things like that, is that traffic paint is very difficult to come by right now. So you may have a paint striper or a contract, and they can't get the materials to be able to do the project. But no, I hear what you're saying, but I don't want you to think that these are cast in stone. They are working lists that we will continue to add to. One of them that I don't have on the list yet, because I can't get an answer from the county attorney, is Hap Holt.
But Jim, that's residing with the Corps of Engineers.
I know.
The county has submitted a
have a section of Happel that was paved by the developer. And what I would like to do is I would like to put that plus the additional 9/10 of a mile as one project for Half Hope Road. Does that make sense?
Is that road in that such a condition that warrants that? Because that's a new subdivision, and I hate to think that property owners that have been living here for such a long period of time, older subdivisions that don't get the benefit of the road paving.
The portion that the developer paid,
Yes.
remember, this was a single lane gravel road. That portion, the developer did not agree to strike that. So that's the county's responsibility, and the additional section of 9/10 of a mile to the Corps of Engineers property, it needs striping.
So when you say you want to do it as one project, you're talking about striping, not paving?
That striping,
Yeah,
yes.
I was confused. I thought you was talking about paving.
No, striping.
Yes.
I don't think this is going to be a case where older areas do without because we're going to strike this new area, because I think we have to strike them all. I mean, we're going to have to look at every road that needs striping and strike it. And then the only reason I bring that up is if we don't find another source of funding for that, it'll have to come out of $1.5 million. You were going to say that. I'm open to alternatives.
Do y'all wish to consider going ahead and letting the
Take
bid
some
go
from Keith.
on the striping? I don't think the striping necessarily needs the specific roads. It more or less, it just needs a quantity analysis of how many linear feet.
Well,
But we don't know that without the specific roads.
But you could lock it in, and that way the vendor is obligated to fulfill on their contract. And rather than waiting until March or April or even later, when if the materials are short supplied, go ahead and get.
Yeah, I think we ought to contract with somebody right away.
Yeah. And if it's less than 200 or 250, I can't remember the amount, you can privately negotiate that contract without having to go to out to bid on that. And that way you could at least get yourselves in the pipeline for that contractor. How much do you anticipate, Jim, total cost on restriping?
Listen, you could let your imagination run wild if I'm hearing what
Let me ask you
you're
this.
saying. I mean, it could be $250,000, $300,000.
Okay, realistically, with the budget implications and everything, do you anticipate it being more than 250?
I would not commit that it would not be less than 250.
I think it will be.
You did?
More than.
It'll need to be let bid.
What you do is two separate. We
Now-
do what we have now.
Okay, now let me explain something to you. When we do the contract paving, in the specifications there, if it's a road that we're gonna do contract paving on, the striping is specified in the bid documents. It would be the contractor's responsibility. The striping that you're talking about is roads that are not to be paved.
Right, but they're all over the county
Right.
and they need striping desperately.
Or if it's a road that is an LMIG road paving, then we include the striping in the estimate that we put
Right.
with that project.
This would only be for roads that are not going to be repaved, but are
That's
going to be
what I
restriped.
heard.
But there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Haven't you told me that some paved roads can't be striped because they're not wide enough?
That is
Yeah, the
correct.
single lane roads, you can't do anything.
The regulations is that you have to have, each traffic lane has to be 9 feet. With 2 9-foot traffic lanes, you can do a center line stripe. You cannot do the edge line stripe without 20 feet. And those are,
For example, Buddy Road, Lakeview Road, Crowdtown Road, you could do those, they're 14 and 16 feet. So you cut down the numbers on that. Are we finished with Frank?
I am.
Or we'll do under 200,000 if we come back to the whole.
In the same calendar year, no. You could do it at the beginning of the following calendar year. You know, realistically, 232,000, 240,000 may take you a long ways. I don't know that y'all have the expectation that you're going to be able to fully strive the entire calendar year.
Hopefully most of it. Well, I mean, it would be the roads that are heavily traveled.
Right.
There are some roads that, there's none of track roads, restriping.
Yeah, I think there are two roads. I just think if you could avoid letting it go to bid, that would be preferable, because you don't have that delay and you don't have to examine the bids and to vet them and everything. But if it's necessary, or if it seems like it would exceed the, and I think it's 250, if it would exceed that amount, then yes, I would advise you to go ahead and go bid.
If we include striping in with the contracted paving and the LD paving, does the amount of striping count against us in terms of that 200 or 250,000?
No, those are two totally independent, even if they're the same contractor, they're two totally independent contracts.
Okay, good.
But I think your striping company is probably going to be contracted out directly with the county, whereas with those others, they're subcontractors of the paving contract.
Well, for myself, with the striping being included in with the paving portions of it, I'd be good with saying 200,000.
Now, the striping's only included with the contract paying, not with the, what we do now.
No, it's included with LD too.
Is it?
Yes, we include in the LMIG estimate that you have, the example is 22, we include striping.
But that's why I was concerned that that might also be counted against us toward our total we're allocated for without bid. But if it's not, then I'd be good with us maybe just allocating 200,000 and giving Jim to go ahead and start trying to find somebody.
Whatever the figure David has.
Yeah, I just stay a little shy of it. If it's 250, I'd go up to 240, you know, that way I'd get this close.
That would be
You
ideal.
want to tell us what the figure is?
I will.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
But, Mr. Attorney, even with a $250,000 or $200,000 project, we still want a signed contract, right?
Yes, it's still going to be a contract, it's not going to have.
But it's, with that, then it comes to the Board of Commissioners first.
Well, you're going to go ahead and contact the different vendors, and you can negotiate that as best you can, and I'm certain that you'll do a fantastic job, Jim. And then you're going to present a contract to them, and they'll approve it and go from there. But the biggest thing is you're going to lock in those materials so that when spring and summer arrive, the warm weather, and they can apply that paint, they've already accounted for it in their process, and we're not trying to jump in June or July and they don't have the materials.
I don't mean to correct you, but that's not the process. We would develop specifications individually per road. We would give them the line miles, whether it was yellow traffic paint, double center line, or edge line. And then we would ask for a quote.
Yeah, and Jim, you're asking for with specific roads. Yellow paint applied in town or in the county is going to be the same cost. Or you're just going to give them a general idea. You're asking for how much is it
to apply the line for this, not this particular road, but for a section of road. And you'll ask them to develop that cost. It should be no different in town versus out of town as far as the cost.
What does town have to do with those?
Well, what you're saying is you want to develop a specification, a road, and then get a quote on that road. Well, that specification that you develop with the contractor is what you would be doing initially. Let's get contractor A to agree to apply yellow paint down the center line for X amount per linear foot. And then you'll say in spring or in April or May, would you go apply that paint on this road, which is 2.5 miles, at your advertised rate?
Oh, you mean an open end type?
Yes. A lot like the contracts that y'all enter into with respect.
I doubt we'll get someone to agree to that right now. Because that's.
Well, you can, when you're negotiating, you can give them an estimate that that the county expects to spend up to $240,000. That's a pretty sizable expenditure. I would think that a contractor, maybe not the one you're thinking of, but maybe one or more, would say, hey, we'll agree to apply that paint for this per linear foot, before, they'll probably want to say.
Per line mile, baby.
Line mile.
Educate you.
Well, let me ask this. If you compile that list of roads,
Right.
and on each road, you compile
what we have started.
Okay, and that process is completed. Now, once that's completed, what stops us from just going back through those roads and saying, okay, this one is 1.5 line miles of yellow paint, this one is 3/4 mile of yellow paint, and totaling up the line miles of yellow paint,
Nothing.
and line miles of this and that, and then just tell the vendor, at some point, we need, 78 miles of line miles of yellow paint, we need 79 miles of white paint, so forth. And you don't have to care right now where that's going. This is how much we need. And, what we can charge us to do it. Sorry.
Or which road?
I don't see why they would care which road. They just need to know the total line miles of this color or that color.
I think the difficulty with what you're saying,
Each
if I
road
got a
has
mile
its
here
own
and a mile here
characteristics.
versus 10 mile stretch.
Okay, I can see
Why
that.
don't you show them the list, here's what I want done.
I will you when I get the list.
What are you waiting on?
Can you have it by tomorrow night, Gil?
Okay, all right, now, let's get off of striping.
Please.
I want to get back to contract paving.
Well, let's get off striping, but continue with it.
Okay, I'm
Continue forward.
It's a work in process. Contract paving is what I'm trying to focus on now, because we've got to develop and advertise the specifications for the paving of the roads. And these are the roads on the contract paving list that I'd like to do in 22 with the board's approval.
Why Town Road, not Yukon? Yukon does some bad spots.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any.
Because, well, one of the things that you'll notice there, we split Turnip Town Road up in two sections. From Turnip Town to Ray Mountain Road, and from Ray Mountain Road then to the Walnut Mountain Gate, which is the end of the asphalt. And the reason that we did that is because I suspect that when we bid these roads out, it will be over the $1.5 million. But what we did and what we will do is we leave the option open to remove a section or part of the road paving list. Turnip Town Road is in worse shape than Yukon. No?
Put it over,
When y'all go and inspect the Kells Creek Road there off of Yukon or Boardtown, I'd encourage you to go visit each one of these as well, just to get an idea as to whether you wish for it to be. I mean, I live on Old Bucktown, and this is before you turn off of Tiffany Avenue. It may be something that could wait a year or two. I'm not encouraging that, but I just think it merits inspection by y'all.
I've been over, and Mulkey Road, what? Say that's in bad shape.
Monkey Road and look, the other thing is the traffic, folks. I mean, the traffic is going every day in Monkey Road because of the outfitters, because of the venues, because of additional subdividing, and Monkey Road is full of potholes.
I have one of the things on Mulkey Road, because I drive that every day. We get a lot of good-sized, relatively deep potholes there. The road department does a good job of coming in and patching them. You know, I can drive through there and have to be dodging them because they're so deep. And maybe the next time I come through, they've all been patched. The problem is, a week later, it's like they're back again and just as deep.
And Charlie,
is that the road patch?
That is the reason that I am so pleased that we are contracting this out, is because when you have a pothole to develop, that means there's something underneath that is causing that. With the milling that a contractor is capable of doing, you're pulling all of that out and you're rebuilding the base and the binder and the level that we're not capable of doing.
But do they do that routinely? Do they do milling on
We
every road?
specified in the specifications.
Okay, so we had that for Boardtown?
Absolutely. We had it for Boardtown, for Round Top, Mount Pisgah, and
Good, good, okay.
Yes, sir.
How long is Yukon Road, roughly?
Wait a minute.
I'm thinking that probably 1 year until we have to do like.
You've gone the road, you're below the budget.
As bad as Mulkey and
You're going up past Clear Creek, past Clear Creek is worse.
Yeah.
8.4 miles.
Okay, so we've got about pushing $1 million for that one. Boardtown was over $1 million. $1.5 million. So that would be the entire paving budget.
I think if you could get some repair work done. Certainly help. I'm gonna push you can accept it. It needs to be careful.
We've got pothole patchers that are approved for purchase for 22, don't we?
Yeah, but the type of repair, Charlie, that is needed would be to mill out the pothole, take everything out, build it back, and put asphalt.
But just to make it last another year or so, we could make with those new pothole patchers and hot mix, not cold pack.
Give me 5 more people and a pothole patch.
What I've seen is separation, not pothole, separation.
What actually happens, Hubert, is you have what happens is alligator cracking. Water then seeps down through those cracks, freezes, expands, and that's then the asphalt explodes. And that's how most of your potholes come about.
I've noticed, I'm sorry.
And the other thing, it can be weight, volume of traffic, all of those things. But a road that is properly done milled, and the soft spots repaired properly before you actually put the final pavement, then that road should last you for 15 years.
I've noticed that the state, with that alligator cracking, they come out with what looks almost like a weed little thingy, except it's doing, I guess, some sort of tar. And they just go over the cracks and fill it in.
Seal the cracks?
Seal it, yeah.
Yeah, that, in my estimation, that is just to extend the life of the road.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just if we were to try to extend the life of Yukon for another year or so, because I'm sure it needs to be paved, but I think paving Yukon would probably take most all of the, whatever pot we could set aside.
Well, I promise you it would. It would.
But if we don't pave it, we need to do something to
Well,
extend the
then,
life of it.
next year, let's go, we'll put Yukon on the list, and you all just bite the bullet.
For 23.
Yeah.
We'll put it on the
It'll
list
take it-
and
it'll
take a
take
look
a
at
million
it.
and a half.
There's no guarantee we can do $1.5 million for 23, but we'll put it on the list, and that'll be our starting point, and we'll just have to see what we can do.
And one of the things that complicates Yukon is the school zone there, because you're widened, striking, all of those things that you see. And of course, now we've got Yukon on our guardrail list this year as well. So we've got damaged guardrail out there. But
What I'm hearing, David agrees with me, Old Bucktown Road, not that shape. I think Robert's Ridge is worse shape than Old Bucktown.
Yeah, I'm, again, I don't travel it regularly, but when I do, it doesn't seem, Parker Road that comes off Roy is in worse shape. It's eat up with potholes.
Parker Road is a tar and chip.
Right, but
Yeah, we're talking about contract asphalt.
well, I know what I'm saying though, is why put expensive asphalt on a road that doesn't necessarily need it when the other road up the
Well, I'll
road,
tell you what,
Parker.
the residents up there think it needs.
Yeah, but
I would bet you could go to any resident in this county and say.
I wouldn't
your road needs to
disagree
be paved.
with what Hubert said, and Roberts Ridge was one of the roads that I was trying to stay within the $1.5 million. I could take Old Bucktown off and put Roberts Ridge on there, but it will drive up the cost.
You're talking about 3.2 miles versus 2.2.
Roberts Ridge,
2.2.
okay, I stand corrected. You won one, you.
We're gonna take that off and add this.
I don't have a problem with that.
What do you think?
I agree on Robert's Ridge.
So you can take off your striping list, but that's gonna be included in the contract. And now, submitted people aren't here, don't you think? We'll have some more.
I think we're going, I think we discussed. it.
Hold the phone.
I talked to Sandy about that, we're almost.
Very good.
Okay, we need to add Roberts Ridge to the road construction list right under the motion. It's not on there. Well, we gotta add it.
I mean, it's written down here.
Are we taking Old Bucktown off for now?
Yes.
let's hope that one that doesn't.
I'm sending all
I
the
know.
residents, by gosh, to Clark and Clark.
But really, honestly, Jim, I just don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm glad that Commissioner Parker Hubert agrees that I just,
Good. Okay.
Charlie will welcome, I want him all being elected else for a long time.
Yeah. All it means to me is I'll get calls for a different set of people.
That's a good call, Hubert, on that. That's-
Okay. Anything else?
We done?
All right, I appreciate it, Jim. I have just a couple of things I need to say real quick. We'll call it old business, kind of out of order here.
Executive session.
It doesn't require one. We can do it. It's just real estate.
I'm going to take a session.
Okay. Then why don't we just go into executive session? I would make a motion we do that with no action anticipated.
Okay. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, folks.